Okay, so welcome to another episode of the Chakra Meditation Podcast. And today I am joined by Christian de la Huerta, who is an author and transformational coach. Welcome, Christian. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, Roseanne, thanks so much for having me on your show.
Yeah, no, it's exciting because you were really kind and you sent me a copy of your book, Awakening the Soul of Power. And so our conversation today is really about the relationship that we have with power. And I think this is your book is fantastic. I really recommend it. And in all honesty, it has had like the most incredible reviews, incredible, big, huge, famous people saying it's amazing. So please do go and have a look at it, everybody, because it is a really good read. So Christian, tell me, how did this book come about? How did you come to write Awakening the Soul of Power?
Well, thank you so much for the kind words about the book. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a kind of thing that's been brewing in me for 10 years, and I've been thinking about it. I even started doing retreats on that theme. And then the pandemic hit, and it forced me. It forced me to sit my butt down and get it out of my head and onto the computer screen and then onto paper. Um, and I've been thinking about that for a while. Why is it that we struggle with issues around power? Because I think most of us do. We have an ambivalent relationship to it. Part of us wants it, part of us is afraid of it. And I think what we're afraid of is that if we really stepped into all of who we are, if we really owned our power, that other people may not be able to handle it and that we might end up rejected and alone. And that's no fun. I think we also fear that we might abuse it. And no wonder. How many abuses of power have we witnessed in our lifetimes? Like countless. And we don't want to be that way either. And then add to that mix the fact that we've been conditioned to believe that power is a negative thing. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And who wants to be corrupted?
Yeah.
But what they didn't tell us about that quote is that Lord Acton was speaking specifically about political power, not personal power. So we've gotten a little confused about that. And we've also, when you add to that mix the fact that we've been conditioned to run away from the emotions, we've labeled the emotions weakness, we hate conflict, we avoid confrontation. And when you put all that together, what happens is that we end up giving away our power, our innate power that nobody can give to us, nobody can take away. We are the only ones who give it away. And to me, the sad part is the reasons for which we give it away. It's like we override our preferences, our senses, our desires, even our dreams, and we settle for an illusion of acceptance, for a false sense of security, and for crumbs, morsels of pseudo love. And so it's not a good strategy that I would recommend.
Yeah. No, and I think the subject of power is so fascinating because you're right. When you just use the word power, it is that sort of, that sense of like, power is a bad thing, or it's a dangerous thing, or it's a thing. The way I look at power is, and when I'm thinking energetically, is that you don't want to be underpowered, because you don't want to be, because then you're just going to get trodden on. You don't want to be overpowering, because you don't want to be overpowering. You don't want to have power over. For me, what comes is in the happy medium is empowerment. And I think that's what you're talking about when you talk about stepping into your power, is that sense of empowerment, which is owning your own power, which energetically is solar plexus work. That's your engine, your fire, the fire in your belly that gives you the energy to show up in the world and to show up as yourself in the world. And this is the thing that so many of us struggle with. And I'm sad to add this as an extra to that, but on the whole, it's a women based it can be predominantly women who find that is an issue, because women in power, women who have power, so women who are running companies or presidents, or, you know, have, in inverted commas, power, they have a tough ride. It's not easy. It's not easy to get there. Nobody, you know, not many do get there. And when they do get there, they get shot down, you know, in lots of different ways. So
Absolutely.
this relationship that we have with power, there are so many different types of power that we come across, you know, right from our first school teachers. They have the power over us. On a daily basis, we have our governments with the power over us, with law enforcement who has power over us. There is a lot of, as a society, there is a lot of people who have power over us. So it's not surprising that our power is somewhat subdued and suppressed.
Yeah, and when you add to that, you know, religious institutions that talk about power in a completely different way,
Yeah.
we're actually giving power away for our reason for being. Um, it's very interesting, and I mean, so many things to unpack in what you said, because I love the importance of balancing and in the body, like with the power center. Sometimes, you know, I work with people in breathwork, and sometimes it's barely perceptible, like energetically. Sometimes it's like, whoa, you need to balance that out a little bit. That's a little bit out of control.
Mm.
The issue around women is really important, because you started to point us in that direction of the conversation, that we all struggle with power.
Mm.
But and the book is for everybody, but I particularly dedicated it to women, and that's one of its main focuses, is because as a world, as a species, we've been running so off kilter between the masculine and the feminine energies.
Yeah,
It's not to put women up on a pedestal. It's not to idealize women. Women also abuse power. And it's
absolutely.
certainly not to give women more crap that they have to clean up in this world, this mess that we have all created. It's because that imbalance needs to be corrected, because that impacts everything in our world. And so I believe that when women are in 50% of power in this world, we don't want to go back to a matriarchal stage. We want balance.
Yeah,
And it has to start in each of us.
yeah,
That when women are in 50% of power, that will have a very different relationship to war and poverty and hunger and distribution of wealth and healthcare and how we treat the environment, to all of it. So
yeah.
for me, it's I think of it strategically. Like, what is one thing that we could focus on that will then impact everything else? And that's what I land on.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's interesting as you're saying that. What was coming up for me was, you know, but within every person, whatever, whether they be a male, female, somewhere in between, we all have a masculine energy and a feminine energy within us. We have that divine God and goddess within us, the yin, the yang, the solar, the lunar within
Exactly.
us. And women, you know, and I think the feminine, if you want to call it the divine feminine, the feminine side of everybody, you know, whatever gender, has been suppressed, because the qualities of the masculine, this is very much identified with, I don't know, I guess the oh my God, what do you call it? The commercial revolution. No, you know, when industrial revolution. Sorry.
Yeah.
I went it in my head for a second. You know, the qualities of the industrial revolution were to produce more, make more, achieve more, make more, achieve more, get bigger, grow, grow, grow. And it's, you know, it pushed away that nurturing, you know, more feminine side of that is within all of us, you know, that
Exactly.
connected with the earth, that connected with nature side. It was like, no, there's some gold down there, just rip it out, you know.
That's it.
It's
Yeah. It's a wham bam relationship to the earth,
yeah,
without, you know, we're just going to rape and pillage and take whatever it is that we want without even regard to our own survival. And
yeah,
now we're beginning to pay the price for that. Now we're beginning to see the effects of that approach to the natural world, and to this beautiful little pebble on which, you know, we were, there's a little spaceship that we live on, hurtling through space at 17,000 miles per hour, and we're not even taking care of it.
Yeah, no, it's mind-boggling. But for me, like, this balance of power is within everybody. This balance
Yes.
of the masculine, feminine power is within everybody. And so what makes me super happy is when, a masculine man like yourself is out there going, no, we need to redress this balance. And this is what is really required. And I think a lot of women have, because of the society and the way we've been brought up and conditioned and programmed, is we all, men and women, need to embrace that nurturing, that female, that feminine side of our energy, of our power center, because my God, the power within the feminine is immense.
Oh my God.
When you feel that goddess energy rising, oh, hello, watch out.
Oh my God, is like, that's what I say. This all stems from a misunderstanding or a couple of misunderstandings, because you're absolutely right. That balance between the masculine and the feminine is throughout all the cosmos. It's throughout creation, except on this little planet. Well, I don't know, but maybe there are other little planets that do that too. But on our little planet, somewhere along the way, I guess when the patriarchy came around several thousand years ago, we decided the feminine was weakness.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute. You want to talk power? You want to talk strength, resilience, courage? Let's talk about the power of creation that resides in a female body. That's power. And I think of this story that, Betty White, the comedian who passed about a year ago, there's a story, I don't know if it's real, but I read it somewhere, that she was being interviewed in one of those multiple celebrity group interviews, and somebody said something about having balls. And I hope this doesn't offend anybody.
I love this. No, please. I was tempted to say it myself. I want you to, though. It's so good.
Yeah, but she goes, wait a minute, where did we get this connection about balls and courage and strength? It's like you thump those little things and the guy collapses over, bends over in pain. You want to talk strength and courage and resilience? Let's talk vaginas. Those things take a pounding.
I love that so much. It's perfect. So it perfectly illustrates, the way that even our language has embraced this sense that, this masculine power. Yeah. There are so many.
There's without minimizing or diminishing in any way the price that women have paid for this patriarchal phase that I think that's what we're experiencing is the end of this, the transitioning out of this, and moving more into balance. So women have paid a huge price for that. And men have also. Like if we look at some of the statistics around suicide, and I don't have these numbers globally, but only for the US. In the US, men commit suicide 4 times as frequently as women do. And in fact, 70% of the suicides in the US are committed by middle-aged white men, which is still a group that I think pretty clearly still expresses and owns the majority of the power in this world.
Yeah.
And also longevity, like women outlive men in the US by 5 years. Those numbers I do have globally, that's by 7 years globally. So what's up with that? Because we think, the group that holds the majority of the power would have longer lives, more privilege. So what's going on? And I think it's because of this misunderstanding that you and I are talking about, this labeling the emotions and labeling the female, the feminine weakness. Guys, since we're little kids, little boys don't cry. Little boys don't cry. Don't cry. So we grow up, stuffing all of our emotions. I think we all do, but in particularly men. Yes. And we walk around like these uncaring, unfeeling robots, thinking that that's what a man does. That's what it means to be a man. What a limited perception of what it means to be a man, and what a misunderstanding that the emotions are weakness. They're not weakness. They're not strength either. They're not good. They're not bad. They're just energy.
Yeah, they just
coursing through our body. Depending on how we express them, they have a good or a not so good effect. And there's a price to pay for that, because what used to be spiritual teaching, that everything is energy, now we know from quantum physics that it's true. That means that all those countless times in our lives when we have stuffed and suppressed our emotions because we didn't feel safe expressing them, because we didn't want to rock the boat of a relationship too much, or whatever the reason, those energies don't go away. They get stuck in the tissues of the body. And after a lifetime of suppressing that, there's a price to pay for that. So either what happens is we suppress, and then the next unfortunate one says something to us the wrong way, and boom, volcanic eruption causing harm to our relationships.
Yeah.
Or this is the part that I think connects to the longevity issue. Suppress, those energies start seeping out and showing up in the body as physical symptoms.
Yeah.
Cancer, heart attacks, ulcers. So we've got to get this, both our relationship to power and healing our relationship to our emotions.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely right. I mean, this is the work that I do in terms of trying to teach people that map of energy that is within our bodies, which is what the chakras give you. They give you that very clear map of where particular energy lives within you, so you can identify it. So you can, go, oh, my hips are stiff. Okay, that's where my emotions live. That's where my stuffed down emotions live. That's where my creativity, where my sexuality. So where in my life am I not working there? Or, you have a thyroid issue. So, okay, energetically, that's communication, self-expression, truth, authenticity. Yes. What is it around that I've not been working on, or not been, true to myself about? So, you're absolutely right. Everything is held within us. And right from teeny tiny, from when we're little people, we absorb all of that stuff around us, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. It's still there, and we need to work it out. And so let's just shift now back a little bit towards your book, which is that's got the subtitle Calling All Heroes, which I kind of love. So in your terms, you say that we can all be heroes, and I want you to define what you mean by a hero in terms of this power dynamic and awakening the soul of power. What is a hero?
Yeah, because I think we all struggle with that word hero. I know I do.
Very masculine word.
Yeah. And by the way, I use it gender neutrally. I try to use shiro, and I'm a lover of words, and I just don't like that word shiro.
Heroine,
because
heroine.
Yeah. Heroine, yeah, smacks of something else.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the thing is that in Latin and in Greek, that he in hero has nothing to do with gender. That's an Anglicism. So I use hero for everybody, for all of us. And so we can easily project out and admire a hero, and a first responder, a warrior, somebody who places their lives at risk for the sake of someone else, for the sake of a larger cause. I think the pandemic has expanded in our perception what that is. So now we include our healthcare practitioners, our doctors, our nurses, our respiratory therapists, and I think even our grocery store clerks.
I was going to say, even the people who are stacking the shelves and delivering the groceries. Yeah,
exactly. Who literally made huge sacrifices in their lives to keep the rest of us fed and provided for. But what about the rest of us? And I think that the way that I suggesting is a very empowering and liberating way of living is heroic, because it's easy to coast through life. I don't recommend it, because you're always buffeted by the expectations, demands, the unexpected stuff that's going to happen in our life. So it's kind of disempowering. But to be willing, and the thing is that we numb ourselves out, right? We, within a very creative ways, we run away from our feelings, from thinking, from diving deep inside, with whether it's substances or food or sex or social media or gaming or workaholism, yeah, all of it. And that's not a good strategy, because we know the stuff we're running away from, it's not going to go away on its own. It's only going to get worse and intensify and fester under the surface. And at some point, we're going to have to pay the piper and look at it. So to me, to have the courage and the willingness to face ourselves, to look inside, to face our inner demons, our self-doubt, the stuff that happened to us when we were kids, so that we can heal it, so that we can clear it, so that we can free up those energies that you're talking about. that are trapped in the different energy centers in the body. It's, to me, that's nothing less than heroic.
Mm.
Incredibly rewarding, because the reward for me is freedom to choose how we want to be and how we want to live and what we want to do with our lives consciously, rather than from stuff that happened when we were kids, that's still driving, stuff that we were conditioned to believe, that is still driving our behavior and our choices, and we're not even aware of it.
Mm.
So it's heroic and incredibly rewarding to pause rather than just react immediately when somebody said something that was hurtful or we interpret it as hurtful, um, and choose what we're going to say in response, rather than getting into that boring merry-go-round of you said this, I say that, you say this, we hurl insults at each other and hurtful things, and it never ends well. To have the presence of mind and to override that feeling, that ouch, and choose how we're going to be, how we're going to respond, it's, to me, it's nothing less than heroic.
Yeah. No, I love that, because when I think of a hero, somebody doing something heroic, I'm like, they've done something that's needed a load of courage, and B, it's needed courage because what they're doing is really scary. And what you've just described, going inside, going in to do that inner work on themselves, on ourselves, it takes courage to do that, to face up to
Yes.
all the stuff there. And it is scary. You're opening a Pandora's box of your entire life of emotional shove downs, like,
Yeah,
what?
absolutely.
And it is, but the other definition I always think of a hero is somebody doing something selflessly. They've
Yeah.
they've gone on all fours from their stomachs across a frozen lake to save a dog they've never met, something daft like
True.
that. Like, it's selfless, it's for somebody else. But what your
Yes.
definition of a hero is that you're saving yourself, but that is for the greater good. That is
Exactly.
for, yeah, I love that.
Exactly, because it's all hands on deck.
Mm.
From my perspective, we're living at the most critical juncture in the evolution of humanity. You could say make it or break it point.
Mm.
Um, the planet will be fine. It might take millions of years, but life will find homeostasis again. Life will continue. Consciousness will continue evolving. Maybe at the end, it turns out to be an enlightened cockroach planet, because they seem to be really good about surviving. Now, whether we make it, that's what we're beginning to have to face now.
Yeah.
Witnessing what we have unleashed on the environment and all the repercussions of that.
Yeah.
And so, to me, when I look at it from that perspective, and one of us makes this level of choice that we're talking about, not only to free ourselves and empower ourselves and set ourselves free, but consequently, all the people that are going to be touched and impacted and their lives improved because of that act, to me, that is nothing short of heroic. And yes, what you said is true. It is scary. Like, change is scary. Looking within is scary. Facing ourselves is scary. But you know what's infinitely scarier to me? That another 5, 10, 20, 30 years will go by, because they come to me, and nothing will have changed. And
Yeah.
that we're still stuck in situations where there is jobs or relationships that are sucking the very life force out of us, and we're still there years
Yeah.
later. That's scarier.
Because it's that dealing with the everyday, dealing with that localized power struggles, say it's with your boss or with your dad or with, whatever, or even a partner, like that squashes you into just a sort of existence mode. It's just like, I'm just going to get through this day, I'm just going to get to the end of the work day, or I'm just going to get through the weekend, or I'm just going to get through this family situation, which stops you from living. It stops you from moving forward in your life and expanding where the potential lies. It keeps you, when people have power over you, it's very limiting, isn't it?
Yes, yes. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of Oscar Wilde.
Oh,
One of his great quotes, he said something: everything in life is about sex except sex. Sex is about power. And so it's just fascinating to me how these issues around power just infuse every one of our relationships and every one of our situations, whether it's at work or at home or with our parents or with our kids. So let's do it consciously, right? Because otherwise we're going to go around getting stuck in these power struggles, not even knowing why.
Yeah. I mean, God, we could speak for about a day or two about the power struggles around sex, which is so fascinating because, men, it could be very easily said that women have all the power over sex. We just have to show a bit of shoulder, a bit of a wink, and we have the power, right?
That's it.
But then, but then women are doing that in a purposeful way, and but the power over women is when men take their sexuality from. I don't know. It's a subject that I haven't really even sort of thought deeply about, but it's just it's such a weird dichotomy. It's such a weird division of power, and you're right. Sex is a massive part of power in our human existence.
And it's a great example too of how when there's a power imbalance in the relationship, how then we begin to express it in unhealthy ways,
Yeah.
like passive aggressiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, honey, not tonight. I have a headache. Right? That's it. That's a power play. So whichever one, which is in this case, is probably going to be the woman. Although I've seen, I've heard men doing this too, avoiding using an excuse like that to not have intimate relations. But it's a power play. It's like, oh yeah, hell is gonna freeze over before you get any tonight. But we don't say that, we put on a little smile and we say, oh no, honey, I have a headache. But it's a power play.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's so much that can be a power play. But listen, that's a wormhole that I don't particularly want to go down. I don't feel remotely qualified to go down that wormhole. You probably are, but I'm not. So I want to change shift again. So as I was saying before we hit record, I was saying I love the title of your book, Awakening the Soul of Power, because usually it's the power of the soul or power of something rather than of power. So talk to me a little bit about what soulful power is, because I love that as an expression.
Well, one of the ways that we resolve this ambivalence, this conflicted relationship we have with power, is by understanding that there are different types, that we've been talking about different kinds of power. And so I call it worldly. There's worldly power or ego power, which is the way that the world relates to power. So we tend to associate power with people who have money, people who are famous, people who are high up in some kind of hierarchy, whether it's the corporate ladder or some other kind of institution. The thing about all those kinds of power and expressions of power is that because they're external, they're outside of us, they're fickle. Here today, gone tomorrow, right? And how many companies have gone belly up during this pandemic? And if our identity was that job and that status, boom, poof, gone. Worldly power also always has an agenda. So it's always trying to get something for itself. And it believes that there's a zero-sum game around power, so that you're having power, it takes away from me and from my power. And it's arrogant, like it's always trying to blow itself up to create the perception that it's bigger and more powerful than it actually is.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go very far in history to look at some political leaders who are just so tragically exemplify that.
Yeah.
And so as in contrast to soulful power or spiritual power, authentic power, whatever you want to call it, inner power, which is the part that we all have, right? And it's also that connected to that inner hero that we all have. And so that power is about service. It's the servant leader, making a difference in the world, in other people's life. It's humble. So I think of a Gandhi or a Gandalf in their simple monastic robes, their sandal feet. From looking at them, you would never know how much power they hold until it's necessary, and then get out of the way. Gandhi brought the British Empire to its knees when it was at its highest point in terms of global reach, and he did that without ever shooting a gun or landing a single punch. That's power. And that's the kind of power that, think of a Mandela in prison and what he accomplished from the world, or Dr. Martin Luther King, Jesus, ultimately, with these nonviolent expressions of power that rocked the world. And so, and that kind of power is not threatened by other people having power. So if I'm in my power, if I know who I am, my attitude to life is pretty much, you know what, life, come at me. I know that whatever you throw my way, whatever curveball you throw my way, I know that I'll be able to land on my feet, and I know I'll be able to manage it and handle it and respond. So it's actually a very empowered way of living, and using that same visual, walking around like this, we've come to believe that this is powerful, but it isn't. This relationship to life, it's like a prison, because we're in DEFCON 1, anticipating the next shoe to drop, the next blow, sometimes sneaking in the first blow just in case, preemptively. That's no way to live. That's a prison. This open-hearted gesture, an open-armed gesture, it's a much more nurturing and open and organic and empowered relationship to life.
Yeah.
And it's what you're talking about. You mentioned power over. That's the difference between them. Power over instead of power with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And we have so many self-defeating patterns and relationships and ways of being in the world, where we have this confusion over power. And I think this is where your book is really great, because it goes through all the different types of power that we have. And what I love is that as you have today, you use a lot of really historical references to make your point, and examples, which really helps understand. So it's not kind of theoretical. It's like, this is this type of power and this is what it looks like, e.g., this thing that happened in history that we all know about, and examples of people and quotes of people, which I think is really really good. So
And superhero movies. I love my superhero movies. So I threw in a lot of those cultural references too.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's an interesting thing, isn't it, within our culture, that superheroes and people with superpower, these incredible powers, are really, really worshipped. They hold a very special place in our society, don't they? And I haven't got to that bit in your book, but I bet you I know there is a bit about superpower, superheroes for sure. But I also wanted to ask you before we go, because I've kept you a long time already, and I'm really enjoying talking to you. But I want to know your practices, like practical practices. So it's all very well, like, there's a part of me that thinks, okay, just having this awareness, just having this understanding about power and its dynamics and the various sides of it will be empowering you to make changes and so on. But is that all? Are there any more sort of real practical tips or steps towards empowerment that you can sort of, I'm sure you've got lots in your book that you can give us now?
Yeah, for sure. And I do a retreat that's specifically about empowerment. I do one that's specifically for women, on women's empowerment. And I have a year-long coaching program where we dive into all these issues. And in a way that it makes the transformation more sustainable, because we're going through our lives as we're getting the teachings and integrating the teachings into our lives, so that they don't stay at the level of information. We don't need more information. We've got information overload. What we need is transformation. And that only comes from really living from a set of teachings and taking them on. Another practice that, sometimes you'll have the answer right away. Sometimes it takes going through your life, observing yourself. But a question that I would recommend anybody watching this or listening to it would ask themselves is like, right, where in my life am I leaking power? In what kind of situations do I tend to give my power away?
Yeah.
And so, for example, areas to look in: is it in romantic, intimate, sexual relationships? Or is it perhaps with authority figures, parental figures, bosses, coaches, religious leaders, etc.?
Yeah.
So
And I
because we
suppose you
can't do
identify that
anything.
in places where you actually feel powerless within your life.
Exactly.
That's what comes up for me. It's like, okay, so where do I just become
Right.
a fawn? I suppose it's that freeze, fight or flight, freeze and fawn. It's where you just kind of like lie down and just go, okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm
And
not gonna.
where, yeah, like a dog with a tail between its legs, where do I have those power leakages? Where do I override my preferences, my desires, and say yes when inside it's really no. Inside it's really not okay. But how many times have we said yes just to for appeasement, for a sake of peace in a relationship, for fear of being rejected or whatever the reasons are, but we have to figure out what the patterns are because they're going to be different for all of us. So, and that only comes from self-observation. Like, and so it goes back to that courageous thing of looking at ourselves and asking why we do the things we do, because as long as we don't see it, there's not a thing that we can do about it.
Yes,
So
exactly.
first we have to see the pattern, then we can do something about it.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a good advice. That's perfect. That's just the perfect piece of advice to finish this on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant time I've had with you, Christian. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Before we go, how can people find you? What is your website called? I know I've got it somewhere here, but just tell me
Yeah,
what it is.
website is soulfulpower.com. SOULFUL power.com. And from there they can access my social media. And for your audience, anybody who goes to soulfulpower.com and gets on my email list, and we all know how easy it is to click unsubscribe if it doesn't work for you down the road, and I'm not going to take it personally. Um, so anybody who goes, will send them a sample chapter of the book, and it's the one that talks about what it means to live heroically in the 21st century.
Yeah.
We'll send them some power practices, the kind of practices we were just talking about that help integrate the teachings, and so that we can live from them. And then we'll send them a guided meditation that I created a couple of years ago in the midst of the pandemic that talks about how to find a place of trust and center in the midst of chaos. And I wanted to again thank you, Roseanne, for having me on the show and for having the show, because I know that it takes work, and it takes, in your willingness to do that, many lives are being impacted. So thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Well, it's a real joy, especially to, meet someone like you and have a big, juicy conversation. I just love it. It makes me super happy and fulfilled. So it's my joy as well. So thank you.